Hopefully everybody has had a good day. And we're going to start our Tuesday, March 2nd Admin Public Works meeting. So Carla, could you do a roll call? We lose Carla? I think we did.
She's on goldbelly.com right now, Joe. Hold on one second.
Apologies. Did you say my name?
No.
All right. Well, I
Oh,
guess
you
we'll
said
give her a
Carla.
second. Maybe she got disconnected. Give her another. We need Carla to take the minutes anyway. And there she is.
There's Carl.
All right, we should be recording and streaming.
All right, Carla, welcome back. All right, we're going to
Just sat
start.
there and started spinning.
Well, just in time. Roll call, Carla.
Okay. Chair Garitano,
Present.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Present.
Councilmember Brost,
He is
Here.
okay. Councilmember Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember Flasher,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember Remy.
Here.
All council members in attendance.
Thank you. All right, approval of the February 2nd minutes. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes made by Councilmember Flasher? Is there a second? Made by Councilmember Remy. Any questions on the minutes? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? The minutes are approved. All right, moving on, public participation. Do we have anyone that wishes to make comment? I just see one attendee. So if you want to make a comment, now's the time to do it. You can either do the raise hand or do a chat and let us know. And there is a raise hand. So we will bring you into the meeting, Mr. Marshall. All right, Mr. Marshall, we are now in public comments, so you know the routine. State your name and ward.
Great. Well, thanks for the opportunity. I just wanted to make a comment on the proposed charter amendment change for meeting times. Over the years of the incorporation, for many of you probably didn't go through some of these glorious meetings, but one of the contingents when the city was formed was the fact that people would be able to attend the city hall meetings. A lot of that's from the bad practices that the county had, where they would have a meeting to discuss the future of what's now Wildwood, and they would have the meetings at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Most of us were working and couldn't get to the meeting, so that became a standard way of having those meetings. So as the incorporation principles were laid out, was the fact that people wanted to be in control of their government. They wanted to hold the council accountable for their government, and wanted to know that there would be public meetings that they would be able to attend. Again, at that point, most people were working daytime shifts, and the meeting was established that we would have all public meetings in the city of Wildwood at 7 o'clock. Now, over the years, and so we've done 2 charter reviews, and each time we get to that, everybody just kind of took their hands off of it and said, it's not worth going down that road to try to change something that was part of the original structure. There's no reason that you can't change it, but in the 2 charter reviews that were done over the last 16 years, I guess, it was always one that's something people counted on in order to do it. And I might say that also over the years, we had several council members who could not serve on council because they had jobs where they could not get there for a 7 o'clock meeting, or couldn't get there for a 6 o'clock meeting, either family attorneys or dentists or things like that. So it has been one of those anchors of the city that did not create, and for those of you that might have known that, every time there's a charter review, it takes a 6-month period, a lot of public hearings to get input from people. So you've not had any meetings, and I shared this with the mayor, you haven't had any meetings in the last year and a half that would draw 100 people to a meeting, but they really were concerned that meetings were not being, would not be held at 7. And then likewise, that there would be decisions or votes being taken place in work sessions. So I just wanted to share that with you because to make that change, you as a council can do it. And we haven't had a lot of controversy or public participation to worry about, but it's certainly not one I'd want to, die on the sword for a half an hour. The provisions that are there for the council is if you leave the meetings at 7 and over, the 20 some years I've been involved with it, you could move the work session. So if we didn't have a heavy work session, we'd say tomorrow night or Monday night's meeting, the work session will start at 6:30. Or really light agenda, no work session. Regular meetings started at 7. So the public always knew that it was 7. And I will say that even moving the work sessions around had a tendency to confuse those 16 to 20 of us. Are we at 6:15 or are we 6:30 or whatever? So usually we say, let's just keep the meeting at 6 and we could add agenda items to the work session instead of moving it around because it really did seem to confuse people in moving those different times. So I just wanted to share with the group when it came up the other night. I thought, boy, that's a tough one. And you could change it. The council can put it on the agenda and get it on the ballot. There are some provisions. If you do decide to go with it, it can't be submitted 8 months before the next election. So you have to hold off for 6 months or so before officially it could be done that way. But I just wanted to share with you, it was such a controversial issue over the years. Has not been in a while, and probably a lot of people that were arguing over it, 10, 15 years ago, 8 years ago. Maybe they're not coming to meetings, but it was an issue in the past and hopefully would be something that would be put into consideration. That's it for me.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Marshall.
Mhm.
All right. Seeing no other attendees, we'll keep moving forward on the agenda here. So we're going to go right into Public Works. We have no for information items. We do have 2 for action items. So the first one are the contractor bids for the fiscal year 2021 asphalt resurfacing project in wards 1, 6, and 8. Rick?
Thank you, Chair Garitano, council members. Every year we budget funds in our budget for resurfacing of our rural roads, and this year is no different. We did have to cut the dollar amount back a bit this year due to COVID and the reduced revenue expectations. So we only have 350,000 budgeted, whereas typically we might be closer to $500,000. But nonetheless, we did move forward with a bid earlier this year or last month for our 2021 resurfacing project. For this year, we're proposing to resurface 3 roads or about 4.5 miles of roadway. That would include Woods Avenue, which is about 1.5 miles in length, Model Realty Road, which is about 1 mile in length, and Austin Fort Road, the section east of Route T over to Wild Horse, that's about 2 miles. So we put a project out for contractor bids. We opened those bids on the 24th, February 24th. And as has been the pattern as of late, we have 2 bidders, NB West and Pace Construction. And just to be clear, we are put together a bid package to do a Nova Chip resurfacing. That is a asphaltic concrete product. It's a thin lift asphalt overlay that we have done last year, 2019 and 2017, more recently. So what occurs is there's only 2 contractors in St. Louis that have the equipment to lay that product. So we've only gotten 2 bids over the last several years that we've put this bid out. And MB West, again, this year is the low bidder. They came in at just under 320,000. Pace Construction was about 325,812. So again, for the 2021 resurfacing project, we are recommending a contract with MB West to complete the resurfacing of the 3 roads, as I mentioned. The total contract would not exceed the amount of $350,000, which is what we have budgeted for this year. So that is the department's recommendation, and be glad to address any questions that you may have.
All right. Thank you, Rick. All right. Got one hand up. Dave?
Yeah, I'd like to have a question, Rick, and then make a motion. The question is on the Woods Road. If we go through with the with the, what would you call it? The runoff or the drainage construction that is planned for Wood Road. Would this resurfacing be then superfluous? Would we be damaging it in some way if we went ahead with that other contract?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, and that's something I've been aware of. We do have a project on Woods where we are looking at potentially removing and replacing stormwater drainage culverts. So in those areas where we have a culvert, the reality would be we would have to come back, saw cut the pavement, and then install that culvert and then rebuild the pavement in that area. So with the project, the flood reduction project, we only have, I believe, on the order of 3 or 4 locations along that total length of woods that we'd be doing that work. So when you look at it in the overall length of the project, it's fairly limited. But given the condition of it, and talking to Scott Hummel, he's continued to encourage me that we move forward and do the overlay now rather than potentially wait, do the flood project first and then overlay it. He was really been pushing that we need to resurface it now, and now is the best time to do it. And the key to remember with these projects is we do strive, and I think we've done a very good job of resurfacing our roads at the right time. And you don't want to wait too long. You want to hit them before they get in poor condition or even fair condition. So the idea is you spend a little bit money before they get too bad, or you can wait and spend a lot more money doing a structural overlay. So timing is important, and that's why I just encourage moving forward and doing the overlay now.
All right.
Joe, if I
Dave, you wanna
may
make-
follow up then, and given Rick's response, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the recommendation from the Public Works Department.
All right, so we have a motion made by Dave, and I do see that Councilmember Rambo, you've had your hand up, and I also see Councilmember Bros with your hand up. So Councilmember Rambo, is your hand up to second that motion? I want to get the second then.
I will second that motion, but that's not the reason my hand was up.
Okay, so go ahead then. We'll put you down as a second, and then you can go ahead with your comment.
Okay, Rick, without taking up a lot of time, it sounds as though this is a more sophisticated version of chip sealing the road. And there are only a couple of, is that why there's only a couple of companies that do it? I'm just wondering, what are the attractions, just real quickly? Is it thicker and thus more durable? Does it have other advantages? And could you just speak to that for a second? And then I want to say that I completely concur with your approach as a layperson to do the stitch in time approach. We have smooth roads most of the time. We don't have to go back and do a 2-inch overlay of asphalt, disruptive and expensive and so forth. So props to you for that. And I'll just listen to your comments about the technology.
Sure, Council Member, the Nova Chip product is an asphalt overlay. It is not a chip seal, it's an asphalt overlay. So it's just like a 2-inch overlay, but it's 3/4 of an inch. So it's very dense,
okay.
it's very thin. It goes down hot, it's rolled and compacted, just like a 2-inch overlay. But it's just much more dense, and it's very
But
tough.
it's black.
Very-
It turns out black.
Oh, yeah, it's black. In fact, Fox Creek Road was a Nova Chip overlay last summer. So if you drive down Fox Creek, that's what we did last summer was Fox Creek. We did Orville, and we did St. Paul Road last year. For an example of what the end product is. It looks just like an overlay, an asphalt overlay. We found them to be very durable, and because they're only 3/4 inches, it makes it a lot easier dealing with the potential for elevation changes at driveways and such. And it's much cleaner because it's an overlay. You can drive on it almost immediately versus a chip seal, which tends to be sloppy. It might be a very durable treatment, but it's sloppy to go down and is more apt to get complaints, quite frankly.
Sure. And so this product is it looks just like asphalt. It's doesn't, the chip in the name implied that it was, something like the brown chips, the, different kind of chips and so forth. Okay, that's really all. I mean, I have more questions, but I can look online for that. So thanks for your time.
Hey, Councilmember Gross, you're up.
Yeah, Rob asked my question. I was just curious as to the difference of the product versus regular asphalt. So that satisfied my question. Thank you.
Sure. All right, seeing no other questions, then we do have that motion on the floor. All those in favor, say aye. And by the way, let me make
Aye.
sure, you all aware of the motion, right? Do we need to repeat it? Motion is to move forward with it. So all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstain? All right, the motion passes. So we'll move on to the next item, which are the contractor proposals for maintenance of native landscaping areas in wards 1, 5, and 8. Rick?
Thank you, Councilmember. The department since 2018 has maintained a couple stormwater management areas that were constructed with the improvements to Route 109 north of Manchester Road, north of 100 up to Clayton Road. That project was constructed in 2015, and there were 2 stormwater management areas that were built, and the city at that time agreed to maintain them. And we've been maintaining them through a specialty contractor, in this case, Native Landscape Solutions. Last year, as you know, we worked with MoDOT on additional improvements to Route 109 from 100 to the south through Main Street, where the 2 roundabouts were constructed. As part of that project, there were 3 other, or maybe 4 small stormwater management areas that were built that are also falling under the city's jurisdiction to maintain. So what we wanted to do essentially was advertise or get proposals from specialty contractors that do have the skills to maintain the native landscaping that is incorporated into these stormwater management areas. And we put together a proposal last month, advertised it publicly, and then got proposals from 3 firms to do that work. The idea was to select one firm that potentially would do this work for the next 3 years, although this request would be strictly for a contract for 2021. So with the proposal request, the RFP that we submitted, we got proposals from Native Landscape Solutions, DGM Ecological, as well as Landscape or Land Design Plus. Those were the 3 firms. As I mentioned, Native Landscape Solutions has been working with us in maintaining the 2 stormwater management areas there at 109 near Pond Grover Loop Road and Etherton Road that were constructed in 2015. So I did provide in my memo the pricing that were provided as part of the proposal package by the 3 bidders. Essentially, Land Design Plus and Native Landscape Solutions were definitely the lowest of the 3. DGM was quite a bit higher. When we looked at the qualifications, and that was part of the proposal, was to submit qualifications and provide us examples of the work they've been doing and what their qualifications of their staff were. At least staff, when we reviewed them, felt that of the 2 firms that were lowest, Land Design and Native Landscape Solutions, we really felt Native Landscape Solutions showed up a lot better on paper, frankly, had a much more professional submittal. Not that that's always the most important thing, but they did have some good qualifications. And then that combined with the fact that we had been working with them in the previous years, maintaining the basins on 109 near Pond Grover Loop Road. Essentially, the department would like to recommend moving forward with an agreement, again, with Native Landscape Solutions to maintain these areas for 2021 with the option maybe of extending it for 2 subsequent years in the future. So that's the recommendation, is to execute an agreement with Native Landscape Solutions to maintain these areas. And I'd be glad to address any questions that you may have.
All right, you heard Rick's department recommendation with Native Landscape Solutions. Councilmember Edens, you've got your hand up. Is that for a motion or a
It
comment?
sure is. I would like to make the motion as the department recommended for the $12,705 for March 2021 through December 2021, plus the $5,000 contingency for additional work.
Okay, Councilmember Flasher, you have your hands up. Is that for a second? All right, do you have any comment on that or just second it? Okay, good. All right, moving on then, Councilmember Rambo, you got your hand up. You're on mute. Yeah, Rob, you're on mute. You're gonna have to start over.
I'm sorry, folks. That's a boneheaded move I normally don't make, but yeah, the contract is reviewable after the first year. Did I hear you say that, Mr. Brown?
Yes, that would be the thought would be next year at this time, I would bring it back and provide a recommendation for 2022. And certainly if they performed well, that would likely be the recommendation, but if not, we would consider something else.
Okay, we use these folks a lot. Do we just, we like them, they've always performed well for us? Or are they local? I couldn't get a really good handle on that. Can you speak to that or?
Well, they are a St. Louis area firm, as all three of them are. They're not necessarily Wildwood local, but they're metro area local. As I referenced, we have worked with Native Landscape, maintaining the two existing stormwater management areas there on 109 at Palm Grove or Loop Road. And we found them to be responsive and have done a decent job there. I know we've done some other work with them around town, some other related type work. I know they've done some removal of honeysuckle, I believe, in some of the parks. So they're fairly well known, I would say, in the metro area for this type of thing. But I would certainly say DGM is also known, and we've done work for DGM
Right.
well with June.
They're generally expensive. Yeah, okay, so I'd like to talk to you offline about this, but I'm happy to support the motion to approve.
That'd be
All
fine.
right. Thank you. All right, I've got Councilmember Berlin with his hand up, and then we'll come to you, Councilmember Bros. So Dave, you're up.
Rick, I'm for this, no problem with that, but question to you is, I think sometime almost a year ago, when we were talking about these retention ponds and so on, and to the untrained eye like myself, they look like a weed patch. And they're not. I mean, they're very ergonomically designed to do what they're supposed to do in terms of retaining water and dispensing it. I thought at the time we were going to put up signs at some point, or at least I'd requested that, sort of informational signs at the sites that explained the ecology of what was going on. Has that been kind of forgotten, or is that a good idea, and can we pursue that?
Councilmember Berlin, I don't see any reason why we couldn't do that. And we can certainly look into that and respond back to you. I'm sure there's signage that we could put up that would provide a little more education as to why the plantings are used, and they're designed to be plants that are native and that like to get wet and absorb that stormwater and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's a great idea. We can certainly look into that, and I can report back.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Bros, you're up.
Yeah, when I was looking at this, and I'm not suggesting it for this particular application or situation, but when we have a project like this, do we ever consider perhaps a project toward like an Eagle Scout? An activity that that perhaps that they would learn and develop by participating in a project like this. And I'm not necessarily looking to save money, but to give an Eagle Scout an opportunity. So it's just, I would like to think that maybe we, would consider that. So I don't know if the city ever has, and I don't know if anyone on can comment to it, but that was my thought. I'm in favor, Rick, of what you're proposing. But I also look at it as an opportunity for maybe some young people to learn. Thank you.
And I certainly think if there was an opportunity there to educate folks and involve a scout troop or something to that effect, we'd be certainly open to that. We have tried to encourage, just as far as maintaining our roadways or picking up litter, that kind of effort elsewhere. So you can look at it in the same standpoint, potentially, that there's always opportunities for folks to get involved and help us maintain our right of way or our parks or things like that.
All right. I don't see
Yeah,
any
I would just say I'm not, I mean, I'll be happy to pick up trash. I'm not going to learn from it. But this just struck me as something where I think it could be very interesting for someone to learn. And we have several, Boy Scout troops that, they're very active in our area. And I'm not saying just for them to do community service, but an opportunity to learn. Because I really think they could learn something by participating in this. But it's just that was my only thought. But thank you.
All right. Well, I don't see any other hands up. We've got a motion on the floor. So all those in favor of the motion to proceed with the department's recommendation, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, the motion passes. We'll move on to the next part of the agenda, which is administration. There is one for information item, which is the sales tax summary through December 2020. It's for information item. So if there are any questions regarding that, we'll pause to take those questions. If not, we're going to move forward. And I believe this is also included in the city administrator's report, if I recall. So it's not new information. Seeing none, then we're going to keep moving forward. We're going to go into 4 action items. The first item is the council meeting start time ordinance 2598, all wards. Steve, are you going to speak to this, or do you want me to refresh? You're on mute.
Well, I can make a brief introduction, and then if you want to add to it. But this item here with the start times, let me get back. I inadvertently closed out the agenda. This is the ordinance 2598, which was discussed at the last council meeting. And as you all know, there were a number of issues that were discussed. And then ultimately this was asked to come back to committee. Actually come to committee. It's not coming back because it really was not discussed in committee. But so that's the purpose of having this on the agenda for tonight is ultimately, I think the hope is by the mayor anyway, to have it on the agenda for this coming Monday night, but that depends on the action by this committee.
All right. Well, I think everyone's familiar with it. It was at the February 8th council meeting. So the motion was made back to bring it back to the committee and respond to the council in 30 days. So it is here. And you have the language that is in front of you. So I'll look for either comments regarding the language, maybe what changes, or if you are fine with the language. So Councilmember Remy, you got your hand up, you'll go.
So just a point of clarification, didn't we have this in admin public works to begin with?
Yes.
So just a point of clarification. So I understand that somehow circuitously this came back to us, but it actually never left us.
That is
Correct?
correct. Yes, it was an admin public works, but the mayor does have the right to set the agenda and put it on the council's agenda, but we do have it here.
No, I fully understand. And if I remember correctly, we postponed this, I think. But I think that if in the efforts of this committee, if we want to take this up, I think that we can, from our side, I don't like to have time pressures on something like this, right? We're working on this. This is what we're supposed to be doing.
Well, we have direction from the council to respond in 30 days, and that was made from the February 8th meeting. So we do have to come back to the council at the next meeting, but I will ask our city attorney if that is a correct interpretation or if there is other flexibility.
Should we postpone this? Okay.
John, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, to your point,
Could you speak up a little bit more? I can't hear you too good. Maybe you're not close to the mic.
let me see if I can turn my mic up a little bit more.
I think that's better.
Is it better? Okay, great. The city council referred this bill back to the committee, or to the committee, I should say, and did put a 30-minute time frame on the committee's review. If a review with action is not made on this bill that was referred, then the committee would lose jurisdiction over it and would go back to the council as it was originally presented.
All right, so I think there's the answer to the question. We do have to respond back to council with something. So do you still have some other comments? Otherwise, I do see 3 other hands.
Yeah. No, I do have a couple of questions. I just wanted some clarification on these things here. So we are referring to in this bill, I just want to make sure that I understand this correctly. We are only referring to the Monday evening city council meetings. We are not, so the interpretation say of all regular meetings of the council shall be public meetings of which the council shall provide unless pursuant to law. That is only referring to the city council meetings that we currently have. That's not referring to subcommittee meetings or any of the other committees. I just want to make sure I have that correct, Mr. Caratano.
Yes, you're correct. It says the city council meetings and it pertains to start times.
Understood. Okay. All right. I don't have any more questions at this time. Thanks.
All right. I see Councilmember Bertolino, Edens, and Farmer. I don't know if there's a different order to the way I'm reading it here, but if not, I'm going to go in that order unless there's an objection. So I have Councilmember Bertolino, your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. It was my understanding that the mayor's intention here was to expedite and efficiently run the council's meetings. And that to that way, I think we all agree that we'd like to be efficient in our actions. I'm not sure that just changing the start time is the answer for that. I would think there's 2 things we can do. One is that we set as a standard for all council members that they take upon the obligation to satisfy all of their administrative questions before we come to council. In other words, call our directors and our administrator and get details that we are looking for so we can make an informed decision. We don't want to do that at the burden of the council during the meetings themselves. So get your homework done, get your questions down, and we can run a more efficient meeting. The second thing, and I was discussing this with others this afternoon, and something I've seen successfully implemented in the past, is that agenda items, in our case, it would be legislation or resolutions or whatever, have a time limit attached to them as part of the agenda. In other words, that the assumption is that this item, whatever it may be, is relatively perfunctory. It's a matter of just getting it read and getting it signed off on, if you will. And so it should take 10 minutes or whatever. Topics that may have a little bit more discussion involved in anticipation of that, it would have a time limit, let's say 20 minutes or a half an hour or so on. And that time limit doesn't give you a dead stop, but it gives you a parameter in which the expectation is that we will resolve this issue within this period of time. And we won't keep going over old ground, replowing it. And as my favorite friend from the previous council, Steve Taylor, says, everything about this subject has been stated, but not everybody has stated it. And that's why things just go on and on. So I would offer those 2 solutions and scrap this proposal, go back to the council and saying, we appreciate efficiency is what we're after. let's try two things. A, be better prepared, and B, set agenda times for each of the agenda items.
Right. Thank you, Dave. If I could just ask the city attorney, I just want to make sure with the comments that Dave mentioned, if there's any conflict with Robert's rules, with how we debate, just to make sure, if we're going to go down the path where Dave is talking about. John, if there is any conflict with the language of Robert's rules and maybe applying something like to how Dave proposed, putting a time limit on agenda items?
Well, Robert's rules envisions the opportunity to put a time limit on specific agenda items and a time limit for discussion. But in any event, the city council can establish whatever rules it wants for its meetings by ordinance.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. All right, Dave, thank you. All right, we're going to move on the list then. So Councilmember Edens, Farmer, and Rambo. So Councilmember Edens.
I think, and let me know if you can't hear me because my laptop fan's on. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, just flag me down if you can't. Councilmember Bertolino brought up some interesting ideas. I'd like to noodle on it a little bit more, but unfortunately we have that 30-day limit. I was just thinking, I mean, part of the problem is by charter, we can go up to 18 council members. So that theoretically would give barely any time if everybody wanted to talk, which I would hope not, but certainly not a chance for everybody to talk twice. I think it actually makes a stronger argument for less council members. I do try to get my questions asked ahead of time. I think that that's part of a professionalism which Dave Bertolino executed in discussion very well. My one concern is as we go up to 18 council members eventually is 18 members could be calling staff with the same exact questions. So it adds time in a council meeting, but cuts time off the back end for staff all the time dealing with their questions. So it may not work out as well in the end because of that. So I'd like to noodle more about time caps, but since there is a 30-day limit, I would like to amend section 3.8 and strike the 6:30 and change it to 7, because the only way I'm going to move forward with this as a charter amendment is if it stays at the 7 o'clock time. And we just add more flexibility for a future council if that's something that they want to address.
Okay, that it?
Mm-hmm. Yep, amendment.
Yeah, by the way, it'll always be 16 council members. The charter specifically states eight wards. So the charter would have to change if we add a ward.
I thought we could go up 2 more council members if the census changed. Is that not correct?
It's redistricting, it's redrawing of lines within the 8 wards.
But we have the potential to go up to 2 more council members. Yeah, I didn't bring up wards. I just said we could add and get a bigger council and our talking time would change and the meeting time will get worse. And that's 2 more people calling staff. Yeah.
Well, we can talk offline. I just, that could be a discussion for another day, but just wanted to bring it up. We'll stick to the topic here. All right, so I've got you down next, Councilmember Farmer, you're up.
Thanks. Hey, Steve, maybe this is for you. I guess, like everybody else, I'm all for these things being as efficient as possible. But, tonight we had Mr. Marshall, pretty eloquently lay out the case for why this doesn't need to happen. I have yet to hear anybody say that they think that there's a real need outside of, a handful of folks on the council or whatever that we need to move this. I mean, like a week ago, I think we had our work session start an hour early so we could get some extra things put in there. This to me just seems like such a weird thing to be trying to push through for what seems to be no real apparent benefit. So Steve, is there like some clamoring of public outcry that we need to move this or something that I'm not seeing or hearing about?
Councilmember Farmer, no, there's not any public clamoring, to use your words. This was something that initially, as Chair Garetano said, was on an agenda approximately a month ago. It's something that the mayor has shown interest in terms of having some flexibility as to start times for council meetings. So that's really the impetus. I think several of you have touched on it in terms of having more efficient council meetings. And I think his attempt is to see if trying to get out early for council members as well as staff who've put in a full day, as some of you have as well. So I think that's really the driving force to try to adjust maybe the start time for the council meetings to allow for that. So, but it's not coming from the public that I'm aware of, Mr. Farmer.
I mean, I'm all for, I have a huge amount of appreciation for, you and Rick and everybody else from the city that is doing this stuff every night. Part of my concern is, at least in my time on the council, where I think it's been a pretty agreeable group of people, there seems to be still a lot of time where we take a lot of time talking about things to unanimously vote in support of something, which seems like an awful waste of time to me. I think we could cut, 25, 40 minutes out of something, just not all agreeing with each other quite so verbally. But I don't know. I mean, I don't really see a reason to do this. So I'm kind of struggling with, the possibility of doing it, but I guess we'll see what everybody else wants to agree on. We'll go with that.
Councilmember Rambo, you're up.
Yeah, everybody stole my thunder. I agree with Councilmember Bertolino. We should do our homework, but in my experience so far, everyone does. It's been really pleasant to see, honestly. I really don't want to add burden to the directors, so I'm not sure that calling them with individual questions is the right thing to do. But the thing that remains to be said is I want to thank Mr. Marshall for his input. I think predictability of future meeting times is key to this whole thing, or at least key to getting my vote. I also agree with Councilmember Farmer that I think we have bigger fish to fry, but we can address, if we can address the predictability issue, that's the only way I would support this. So that's it.
All right, Councilmember Flasher, you're up.
So I'm one that probably supports this, and I'll tell you why I support this. First off, it's going to be a ballot issue, so people are going to vote on it ultimately anyway. So we'll let the public speak for how they feel about the thing. I don't think this is some egregious, crazy topic that needs to have a whole lot of time spent on it. Also, the other night, I think it was like a month ago, we had that meeting where we had the ice storm and all that other stuff coming down. In a situation like that, it would have been nice to allow the mayor the flexibility to not have us all get our cars iced down. So I don't think, while I agree with everybody that hopefully this isn't going to be used ever, or very seldom at most, it would be nice to have the flexibility to do it if we needed. And to Mr. Marshall's point, if the public doesn't like it, then they'll vote it down and then we just move on. I don't think any of us are going to lose sleep over the fact that it might have gotten voted down too. But putting it on the ballot for free seems like a reasonable and not a big ask, in my opinion. Thanks.
Okay, Councilmember Bertolino, you're up.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I'd have to say at this point that a referendum takes a lot of time. It's money. We have to have public hearings, et cetera, and it's quite time consuming. I don't sense from this committee that, other than Dan's endorsement, that the rest of the committee members, I don't want to speak for you totally, but have little energy for this proposal. I'd like to make a motion that the committee deny the moving forward of Bill 2598 and report that back to the council at the next meeting, but that we also would entertain from the council a recommendation that this committee take up the issue of efficiency and efficacy of our council meetings, and maybe come up in the future with recommendations on how we can move forward efficiently in our meetings.
Okay, so we have a motion being made by Councilmember Bertolino. And is there a second on that motion? I don't see a second. Second by Councilmember Farmer. Okay, so we have the motion on the floor here made by Councilmember Bertolino. And just to make sure, John, City Attorney Young, that would be in line, right, with what our direction from council is? Is that Is that correct? We can go back with them with this?
Yes, it was referred back to the committee, or it was referred to the committee for a recommendation, and if the recommendation is to not approve it, that is a recommendation.
Okay, fair enough. Good. All right, so we got that motion on the floor. Next on the list, I've got Councilmember Remy and then Rambo. Ken?
Yeah, so I'm just thinking through this motion for a second. So, okay, so if we think about, this is about the motion that was just mentioned. So if we're thinking about how to approach this, right? So the idea that this would promote flexibility to accommodate our needs of our residents and our council. This makes a lot of sense to try to do this. I guess, you know, in the grander scheme of things, and I don't want to bring up too many things, but, you know, because the next topic is going to be talking about the meeting times associated with some of the other meetings. I guess my big question, I wonder with the work session, is there any reason why, since if we, because honestly, this may be the best thing for us to consider in the future, and maybe adjusting this time is a good idea. But is there any reason why we can't start our work session by Zoom for everybody at 4 p.m. and be done by 5:30 and then allow time before a 7 o'clock meeting? But it affords everybody an earlier day, which then subsequently then will accelerate the efficiency of the city council meeting, perhaps, because we won't have to come back to work sessions. I mean, I just wonder if that's an advantage, but nonetheless, I don't know. I don't know if I can support this, Dave. I'm just trying to think, what is the downside of having the flexibility rather than the upside of having no flexibility? I think I agree 100% about the efficiency, especially, I mean, if you've got 16 council members each spending 2 minutes talking about any topic, you've got 4 topics and you're already up to 32 times 3 or 4 per topic, and that's just too much. So I agree with your sentiments. I don't know. I guess maybe I would defer and allow for the flexibility to be placed in this position.
All right. I think city administrators, interim city administrator Cross, you got your hand up. Is that, you want to respond to that?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Not directly to Dr. Remy, but one thing that he said that triggered a thought, Mr. Young can weigh in on this because I think he's the one that initially had pointed that out. I think the city of Wildwood is one of the few, if not the only one that Mr. Young is aware of that actually has a start time codified and hardwired into the code. And with that, there is absolute zero flexibility. So if I think back to, again, where the mayor may be coming from, and I certainly don't want to speak for the mayor or anything like that, but I think, you know, for your all's term and for folks in the future, again, I think I keep coming back to that word flexibility because, you know, right now, I mean, there's just zero chance to make any changes because this is written into the city code. So I think this is just one way possibly to at least change that so that there is flexibility for even future administrations as well. But I believe that, you know, there aren't very many people, or if any other municipalities that have done it the way the city of Wildwood has. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Councilmember Rambo, you're up next, and then I've got Brost and Farmer. So Rambo, you're up.
I'll make it real quick. The problem here is the wild card for me is the predictability, and I'm a flexibility kind of guy. I love this conceptually, but we really need to address the predictability issue that Mr. Marshall spoke about. And so I'm hoping that we can come to that if we send a recommendation forward, if we vote to do that to the council, I'm hoping that we can recommend that they add some language addressing that predictability issue, even if it's just, you know, this allows for extenuating circumstances like inclement weather, but the council meetings will be announced, you know, in advance, and they will occur at the same time unless there's adequate notification to the public or something like that. I just wanted to, you know, throw that out. That's it.
Councilmember Roast, you're up.
Yeah, I guess a couple thoughts I have is that when we're talking about efficient meetings, prior to this meeting, I had a question, so I forwarded an email. I believe I sent it to Steve, and then Steve got my answer through Rick. But I guess one question is that how you prefer questions prior to these meetings? I would rather ask the question ahead of time. And, I think you give it a better opportunity to respond. So that's one question. The other one I have is with respect to meetings. As a council member, the weight of these meetings is minor compared to the weight of these meetings to the city staff. So I would say is that, Steve, you tell me what you want. And again, I'm assuming you're going to represent Rick and Joe and the members of the city team. You tell me what you want. And that's where I'm at. Because I honestly, I don't want your job. You're never home. And so that we have to try to be as efficient as possible. And I'm going to look to you guys to tell me what you want. So I really, there's this I almost refer, like I've told a number of these people, it's like working for a city is like a retail job. You're never home. And that's not right. So like what Dr. Remy said earlier, maybe you have a start time earlier and you have a chance to have dinner and then you have a meeting, but you tell me what makes it best, because there's too many meetings. And then I'd also like to know is like when I have a question, I do like to present it ahead of time, because I think it's a better method of doing it. But is that what you prefer from an efficiency standpoint? Because if you get 16 emails, then you've got to respond 16 times, and maybe it's more efficient just to do it in a meeting. So like, Steve, if you don't mind commenting on that, thanks.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Brost. I think the next topic on the agenda might touch a little bit on the meetings, the number of meetings, and you all looked at that, the attachment. So that identifies the number of meetings and how frequently they meet and the times they start. I will tell you that I will speak for the staff and myself in that we're very appreciative of the fact that you do recognize that we all work very, very hard. We have a great team, but the workload is pretty doggone heavy, and we just lost a 20-year tenured employee 100% because of that factor, because of no home life, because of the 4 nights a week in meetings and so on and so forth. So it's pretty heavy, but I mean, we've signed up for it, and that's the job, and we do the best that we can. In terms of my role as the city administrator, I have no problem whatsoever having 1 or 16 questions thrown to me, and then if nothing else, I can be the traffic cop if I can't answer it. Yes, I've got some. We all have some really great people in the city that can get answers, from Rick to Joe to the other 25 people in that building. But if it's a question that's asked and it's something that I would feel that is pertinent to everybody, the reply would go to the entire council. So it's not like we have to, that question is going to be asked 16 times, because if that answer goes to everybody. So personally, I like getting the questions ahead of time, because none of us want to be blindsided at council without having an answer. I certainly don't want to, I don't like saying I don't know. I'd have no problem saying I don't have the answer, but I will get it to you and get an answer back to you tomorrow. But if you all give us heads up about that, that's all the better. But Mr. Brost, again, we're the staff, but you all are council, and we serve at the pleasure of you all and the mayor. So however you all want to start the times, hey, you're not going to get any pushback from staff if you want to start these things earlier, to where Now, you know what, with the advent of COVID, one of the good things, I suppose, is we're able to do these by Zoom. So we don't have to be at City Hall. I mean, I left the office today at 5:30, came home and was able to get a bite to eat. And as you all can tell, I'm not sitting in my office. I am sitting in my office at home. So we're able to do that. When we were meeting in person, we weren't able to necessarily do that. So that's not too bad. But yes, they're long hours, but they're long hours. I mean, you all put in long hours too, and all the committees that you sit on and all the work that you all do. So appreciate the sentiment, but at the end of the day, we will do whatever you all, this committee and all the other committees ask us to do. I am committed, however, to trying to eliminate some of those committees and try to reduce the number of committees and try to put a hard stop on some of these committees. I'm going to carry that water and try to see if we can't do something like that. But in terms of the council start time, maybe there's probably ways that we could be a little more efficient. For instance, I think Mr. Berlino brought up the fact that the night that we had the ice storm, the mayor was trying his level best to try to get us out early for everybody's safety and so forth. Well, it didn't happen because there was just a whole lot of discussion going on. And I was hoping that maybe, the discussion wouldn't go as long as it did, but it did. So the mayor's attempts to kind of cut that meeting short didn't happen. So I think there's an opportunity there to maybe, and Mr. Berlino, I like how you quoted Mr. Taylor in terms of what he said. That was pretty good, actually. So, Mr. Bro, sorry for the long-winded answer, but that's kind of where we're at.
Steve, if I just follow up one thing, I know you're not a shy, timid guy. So if there comes to be a point where there's something you recognize that we can do better to help, just shove it forward, because I agree with you, is we lost a good person because of scheduling, and you never lose bad people. You only lose good people. So just, let us know, because I would not want your meeting schedule. I'll be honest. So just let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brost. I have no problem speaking up. And I think we can cross that bridge, I hope. But thank you for the offer.
All right, we got a couple more names up before we do, but I just want to make sure we've got that motion on the floor. Carla, could you just repeat it one more time?
Okay, the motion is to deny moving forward on Bill 2598 as drafted, and would be open to the recommendation to take up efficiency of meetings issues within this committee.
All right, thanks, Carla. So we'll keep going through the names, but since we do have the motion on the floor, either, if you're in favor or against the motion, or if you're going to propose an amendment, that would probably be best. So just to keep us moving here in the spirit of trying to keep meetings short. So Councilmember Farmer, your name's up on the list.
Yeah, thanks. So City Attorney Young, I guess this is for you. So, I mean, part of my concern with this is I certainly know that, the council that we have currently and the mayor that we have currently isn't going to use a start time as some sort of a weird, as Mr. Marshall said, like, we're going to start having these meetings at noon because then nobody can show up and they won't argue anything. I guess, John, is the real concern here the fact that just by charter, we are literally not allowed any flexibility at all. And so we're trying to at least allow some of that. Cause I mean, I'm thinking about the ice storm. I don't know why we didn't just dismiss everybody to do this by Zoom at home. I mean, we do this all the time now. And there seems to be sort of like a weird desire that half the people need to be in this building for whatever reason. And if it's a health risk because of a virus or a health risk because of a storm, I don't see why we can't just do this from the safety of our own home if it's all public record. So, I mean, is it literally just that we're the only city that has this and that's kind of the concern?
I don't know if it's just that issue, I think it does come down to, let me make a couple of statements that I think are responsive to what you're asking. One is, the mayor's motivation, I think, is primarily the flexibility and the ability for the council to ultimately decide whether it wants to start its meetings early. But I think that is an important point to this discussion, is that it's right now, it's the council's ultimate decision. For example, in the original language that I presented to this committee, it just simply stated that the regular meeting time shall be as established by the city council, I think it was by rule or by ordinance or what have you. If that was passed by the voters, nothing would change, because right now you have a city code provision that says your meetings start at 7. So if that charter amendment changed, you would still have to change legislation or enact legislation to amend the city code to change the meeting time or to provide the mayor any discretionary flexibility. So ultimately, I think that also addresses the predictability question that's being asked, is you can be as predictable as the city council wants to be. But right now, per the charter, that predictability is limited to 7 o'clock. And any even conceivable flexibility is eliminated because of that 7 o'clock requirement. Now, again, I'm not commenting upon, in deference to Mr. Marshall, who I respect a lot, I'm not commenting upon the prudence or whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. I'm just talking about the practical effects of it all. I was on some of you may know, some of you may not, I was on the Charter Commission. I was the chairman of the Charter Commission for the city of O'Fallon. And their charter says, shall be as stated by ordinance by the city council. So no specific time frame. And I will say, in the 12 years that charter now has been in effect, I don't think they've changed a meeting time once in terms of a start time. So I think it still provides for the availability of predictability, but ultimately it leaves it to the discretion of the city council as to what it wants to do. And it would have to be 9 members of the city council deciding what the city council wants to do, because it would require legislation.
All right. So then last quick thing. So I don't know if this is you, Joe, or John, or whoever. So if let's say we have this little vote here and we decide that, as a committee, we maybe don't want to pass this thing, and we report that back to the council, then do we all as a council, are we going to re-vote on this again as a total group, and they're just going to take our advisement, or is this thing like dead on the vine?
The bill would come back with the recommendation, and then the bill would have to be acted upon.
Okay.
The bill has been introduced.
Okay. So the whole council will get a chance to have this conversation. We'll get to do this all over again, I guess is what I'm saying. It'll be exciting. It'll be good stuff. All right. I'm good.
All right. You got Councilmember Edens and then Remy. Councilmember Edens, you're up.
So earlier, I made a motion to amend the start time from 6:30 to 7 because I felt like it signaled to the public that we would continue with tradition, but it addressed the problem of flexibility. If you remember, I did not get a second on that motion, so that amendment failed. So because it failed, and I'm still not happy with the 6:30 time, simply because of the work session time, I think it's more efficient to run them back to back. And I can tell you on economic development, when we have to have meetings at 5:30 because of planning and parks, we don't have full participation in the beginning. It's hard to get a quorum. And sometimes members are driving home from work during that time. So my concern is really about start time that has to change of the work session due to a council meeting move up. So because that motion failed, and I've been down that road, I am going to, vote to not send this forward to council. I think it's a problem because I know it's going to end up on the agenda again, and we're going to be right back where we started at 6:30. So
Councilmember Edens, are you indicating you want to try to bring that motion that you made before up again?
well, I would like to, but it didn't have the support of the committee, so I think it'll waste time. So I'm just going to speak on support of the motion. I guess it's on the floor.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Remy, you're up, and then I have Rambo.
So I like having the flexibility. I'm okay with considering Ms. Edens's potential amendment if that were to go forth. I'm not going to support Councilmember Bertolino's motion, because I think what I would prefer actually to provide that flexibility is really twofold. And I would actually, if this gets voted down, add some additional language, which will really be related to sending this back to council as is, with the proviso that attendance by council members or the community can be done in person or virtually, which then will provide even further flexibility so that we're not in a situation where people are stuck in the road or at work. They could actually stay where they're at and participate and be active members. And I think that virtual piece of it will quite honestly provide the most flexibility for everyone. And then maneuvering the time when needed would provide that additionally. So I'll vote this down and then make that motion.
All right, Councilmember Rambo, you're up again.
So real quickly, I agree with Member Farmer that it will be weird going through this whole debate again with the council. So I would like to suggest that we consider the exact structure that we were just that was laid out by our city attorney. That it gives us the flexibility and it gives us the predictability and it gives us everything that I think we want out of this. And then we can send something forward positively to the council and they can vote it up or down, and maybe we'll avoid some of the debate. That's I don't understand. There's motions on the floor, this and that. I don't know when my time is to make such a motion, but that's what I'd like to do if Councilmember Bertolino's motion fails.
Okay, Councilmember Bertolino, you have your hand up.
Yeah, it appears, and I'm pretty slow, but I'm seeing the tea leaves here changing. I would withdraw my motion if the second would agree to that, and let's hear a new motion that might be more in line with the consensus that I'm hearing from the committee.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Second agrees with it. So unless there's any objection, we're going to allow that withdrawal of the motion to occur. Is there someone willing to make a new motion? Councilmember, I got three hands up, so it's a tough call here. Are you all? I'm wondering if you're all coming up with the same motion. I know Councilmember Edens, you had just made a comment before.
Mine was going to be the same one, which was to change it into 7 in the wording, just to signal to the public there's a consistent time, since that seemed to be preferred.
All right, well.
And then it still provides the flexibility for a future council to change it. So.
All right, so Councilmember Edens, you've got a motion you would like to make. Is there someone that wants to second that motion? Councilmember Flasher. All right, so we have Councilmember Edens' motion on the floor. Is there any discussion or do you want to vote? Councilmember Remy?
I will amend Councilmember Edens's motion. We'll keep the exact same wording that she wants, but I feel like this is, I would like to amend it to include language in the section 3.8 legislative proceedings that will include the language, the council shall meet regularly, virtual or in person, which then provides further flexibility. Now, let me just be clear, just so people understand my amendment. The expectation is whenever possible that people will be there in person. That's not the goal is not to be virtual. However, to provide this flexibility for the same issues that people have already brought up, which is difficulty with individuals getting there earlier or different times or work relationships. I think at the end of the day, we have one main goal: to represent our wards and our citizens. And so the best way to do that is for us to be participants. So if you miss the meeting altogether, you can't be participants. So providing people this unique thing that we're doing both at the federal level, at the state level, at the county level, I think there's no reason why we can't include that language in there, and I'm going to amend as such.
There's Interim City Administrator Steve Cross. Is there something you want to say before we ask for a second on that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just would ask City Attorney Young to weigh in because when Councilmember Remy was introducing some additional language to the section 3.8 about shall meet regularly, remotely, or in person, there is an item on the agenda about a remote policy. It is not for action. But actually, I'm sorry, it is. It's number 3 about meeting virtually and in person. So I don't know if we're getting ahead of ourselves by changing the language on that. So I'd asked John Young, Mr. Young, to weigh in to see, how these two come into play, because there's a whole policy here that's coming before the committee to discuss about remote versus virtual. If Mr. Chair, is it okay if Mr. Young weighs in on that?
Should we first get a second for my motion before we do that? Because the interest of my motion, my amendment is perhaps a little bit different than the city administrator is mentioning.
Well, if there's someone that wants to second it, I'm happy to take that now.
Carl, can just repeat the motion, Ken?
It's to take an amendment to what Councilmember Edens has mentioned, and will include the language, the city council shall meet regularly, virtual or in person, and then we'll include that language to denote that so that council members can be voting members at those meetings as this moves prospectively.
All right, so City Attorney Young, did you want to comment on the interim city administrator's question to you? And I'm sorry, let me make sure. Farmer, are you going to second that or?
Yeah, I can say, Dave, I saw your hand up. I don't know, did you want to second it or no?
No.
Okay, so
Yeah, just in the interest of moving the ball along, let's second this one and see how we go.
all right, good. All right, John, you want to go ahead and respond to Steve's question?
Well, in terms of the question of are we getting ahead of ourselves, I think the council can make, or the committee can make whatever recommendation it wants with respect to this language, including commentary about the ability to conduct virtual meetings. I will say I want to be cautious about the wordsmithing of that. I understand the content, and I think I understand the intent of Councilmember Rennie's amendment to the motion, or his motion. I want to be cautious and wordsmith this properly to make sure that, because we are dealing with a charter provision, I want to make sure that we do so that if there's ever a change in the sunshine law or a change in technology, we're not hamstringing ourselves. So with the permission of the committee, should this pass, I would ask for some discretion to do that a little bit. And I can certainly work with Councilmember Rennie to make certain that I'm meeting the intentions of his motion.
Okay, 100% support for wordsmithing. I truly appreciate that. I think that would be perfect. I would love that.
You're muted, Joe.
Sorry about that. We've got Councilmember Rambo and Bertolino. Rambo, you had your hand up first. I'll let you go, and then we'll go to Bertolino.
Very quickly again, it's not clear to me why we would want to codify a start time in the charter as this amendment does. We can do the rest of this with the charter amendment using the structure that Mr. Young recommended, and then do the time in legislation. I mean, it's still, I think it accomplishes the same task, but we don't have to be faced with a charter amendment again if we want to change the start time of the stupid meeting. So that's my comment.
Okay, Councilmember Bertolino, you're up.
Yeah, one question for Lauren and one for Ken. Lauren, is your motion referencing section 3.8, the legislative procedure, talks about regular meetings? Are you only saying that you want to change the 6:30 back to 7 in this proposal?
Correct. So the key difference is it still has the or at such time in place the city council may prescribe as rule. I definitely wanted to leave that.
Okay, so you're really basically saying the charter stays the same, but this bill adds the words or at such time and place the council may prescribe by rules. That's the only thing you're really asking to change in here. Is that right? So you're not saying let's change the charter. You're saying keep the charter as it is at 7 o'clock, but let's add this language and as not changing the charter, but adding this language that or at such time and place as the council may prescribe by
Well,
rule.
that or at such time and place still requires a charter amendment. It's just that once a time got delineated, because it started out as a charter member with the or at such time wording, is if we're gonna put a time in at all, I want to signal to the public that it's still at 7 o'clock. And the intent is to keep the ordinance as stands.
Gotcha. Okay, now I
Yep,
understand.
yep.
Thank
So
you.
it still is the charter amendment with the original intent of future flexibility for a future time. It's in line with the ordinance already on the books that dictates the 7 o'clock start time. Mhm.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
Ken, I'm sorry, Ken, please repeat for me your amendment to that or your change to that?
With wordsmithing from the city attorney, honestly, all it is doing is it just adding the ability for the flexibility for the virtual component as part of this. Because what I would hate to do is have something that would go forth that would perhaps affect those people that Mr. Marshall had mentioned and others that have their apprehensions about people throughout the day who can't physically make it to the location if we did modify the time. By adding that remote or virtual component of this, you actually add flexibility so that if this were to get passed, they get passed together, and then we have maximal flexibility for all.
Okay. And you're just asking city attorney to wordsmith that to make sure we don't get hung up in future technologies when we're all doing telepathy and we don't have to meet at all. Okay.
Correct.
Thank
Correct.
you. All right.
Councilmember Edens, do you have your hand up or is?
I do. I just wanted to make sure I understood Councilmember Remy's amendment, because that applies to a future work session as well, because the charter amendment doesn't discuss the work session. And my concern is virtual mostly for the work session. So would that have to be taken up separately in the virtual policy, because it isn't addressed in this amendment? And I just want to make sure that means we're saying by ordinance that we don't want a physical quorum by implication. City Attorney Young.
Could you repeat the question? Because I'm not sure I was trying.
Yeah, I really appreciate Councilmember Remy trying to address my concerns about making the meetings, but as his amendment stands, this is really about council meeting time, and it doesn't address the work session virtual attendance policy. It's just adding to an attendance policy for the council meetings. And I just want to understand if this becomes a statement then that as a city, we no longer need a virtual or a physical quorum with the wordsmithing.
It would not, I don't think we would be specific enough, and we would not specifically identify in the charter whether or not a physical quorum would be required or not. I think that we would make something, and this is just off the cuff language, so take it for what it's worth. But I believe it would be something akin to shall meet regularly shall meet regularly at least once each month at 7 p.m. or at such time and place as council may prescribe by rule, provided, however, should the council provide for regular meetings to start prior to 7 p.m., the council shall provide for procedures for participation, remote participation by the mayor, city council, and members of the public, consistent with applicable law. Something to that effect.
Exactly what he said.
Again,
Okay.
I need to clean it up a little bit, but that's the gist.
Okay, I couldn't tell Councilmember Remy if it was also for meetings that started at 7 and not if the council meeting was moved up.
No, in that circumstance, then the remote participation policy that the city administrator was mentioning then would apply for that case. But what I don't want to handcuff people by if we had to move up times that they're unable to make the meeting. I think that would be disingenuous.
Yep, okay, got it now. Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other hands up. So with that, Carla, do you want to read the amendment? We'll take a vote on the amendment, and then we will go to the main motion.
I just must. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, the motion that Councilmember Edens made was to approve Bill 2598 with the change of the time in section 3.8, wherein it says 6:30, change that back to 7. And then Councilmember Remy amended it to also include the language and the part about meeting regularly, that it could be virtual, remote, or in person.
Okay. All right, so we have the amendment by Councilmember Remy about remote or in person. Any other questions before we vote? All right, let's try to see if we can do this by voice. So all those in favor, this is for the amendment. And you have a second on that, right, Carla? Just want to make
Farmer.
sure. Okay, good. So let's try by voice on the amendment by Councilmember Remy. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those oppose?
Opposed.
All right, we got one oppose. I don't know if I heard before how many we had in favor. So I'm going to try. Why don't we just do a roll call? It'll be a lot easier to do that. Let's go through roll call, Carla. Sorry.
Okay.
I only heard like 2-3 voices, I thought.
This is on the amendment, right?
This is just on the amendment.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost opposed.
No. Yep. Thank you.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Chair Garitano,
Abstain.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember Remy.
Yes.
Okay, so the amendment passes. Now we're going to do the main motion. So we have the main motion made by Councilmember Edens with the time change over there. So Carla, let's just do a roll call because it'll be easier.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
No.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Chair Garitano,
Abstain.
Councilmember Rambo,
You're on mute, Rob.
I'm very sorry. No.
Councilmember Remy.
Yes.
Carl, I think that passes, right? What's the count?
Correct.
Okay. All right, good. Passes. We'll move on. All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda here. Let me just pull my agenda up here. This is around council meeting start times and durations. I'm going to let Steve talk to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of the schedule that's included on the agenda, it's a result of a number of council members talking to me with regards to the number of meetings, the start times, and just kind of wanted to get an idea of how many different committees we have, and how often do they meet, when do they meet, and so forth. So that's what the schedule shows. So the purpose, that Chair Gaetano asked me to put it on the agenda with this attachment would be just to begin a discussion, if it's something that the committee wants to take up. In terms of the number of committees at some point in time to address that, as well as the start times, and then any potential hard stop or semi-hard stop in terms of stop times. There is one committee, Parks and Planning Committee. Chair McCutcheon does have she tries anyway, a hard stop of 2 hours. And there are many times when it hits 2 hours, regardless if it's in the middle of a discussion, Chair McCutcheon says, we're done. So you all can discuss if this is something that the committee wants to take up, if it would be at the purview of each individual committee chair. But, we've kind of touched on this throughout the evening in terms of the number of committees and the times and so forth. So it was put on here. It's under for action, but maybe it's a discussion item perhaps. But anyway, that's the reason why it's on the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'll add a comment there since we spoke about this and I thought it was a good idea to bring to the committee here. So to your point, maybe there is an exercise that might take some time. I don't think that the committee is probably prepared right now to make recommendations as far as maybe the number of different boards and committees, because it does involve a lot of work that's taking place and a lot of people that are involved, and certainly their voice should also be included. But I do think the one ask that you had brought forward, which is the one you mentioned where Parks and Planning has the 2-hour rule. I think that is a great rule because it puts some guardrails in place to force people to try to get the business done within a certain amount of time. And they then will have to take a vote if they want to go beyond the 2 hours. Like, so for example, if we had that rule, we would have 30 minutes left to get through the rest of our agenda unless we voted to continue. And I think it's very important because to what the city administrator, interim city administrator said, we've got staff that's putting in long hours and they still come to work the next morning at 8 o'clock. So they're putting in long days, and Councilmember Brose said it. I think if we all sat and think about it, is this a job that you would be willing to do if you were coming in the morning and stay till night? So I think we got to put some controls in place to help us with that. Councilmember Berlino suggested maybe putting some time on the agenda, although my opinion on that is we also don't want to suppress the opinions of people that want to express their comment. Robert's rules does have, we do it in council. You can speak up to 2 times, 10 minutes at a time. But that's about it. All right. I've got a number of hands up here, so I apologize if I'm not calling them in the order that you raised them, but I do see Remy, Edens, Rambo, Bertolino, and Farmer. So we will start with Remy.
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate the efficiency of Councilmember McCutcheon. Yes, Joe, we only have a half hour left in your meeting. So one thing I would say is I'm going to make a motion because I do think that it's vitally important for 2 reasons, I think, for us to look at this and look at it very carefully. We have phenomenal staff. We can't continue, I think, to burden our staff to be, working 16, 17-hour days for 13.5 meetings, and there's some missing here. Rural Internet's not up there. There's a couple others I noticed that aren't even out there. Some ad hoc committees that sometimes also had met as well. And so the 13.5 meetings that you're seeing up on this spreadsheet may actually be the low end, and that half includes the community task force, which is a half. So to that point, 2 other points I'm just going to make, and I forgot to bring this up, so I'll bring it up in regards to this. I do think there may be an advantage when I was mentioned about efficiency and how we can improve communication prior to meetings. I don't know that 16 council members calling all of the city staff all at once is a great idea. I think actually what might be really helpful is to consider on a Friday and a Monday to have open office hours basically for Zoom, where we have like an 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock on a Monday, and then we have a 2 to 3 o'clock or 3 to 4 o'clock on a Friday. And council members basically can all Zoom in during that time and ask questions specifically germane to the agenda and be able to ask their questions to city staff at that time. I think that would probably improve efficiency without having to have multiple phone calls while city staff is working specifically on a lot of these issues. But what my motion is going to be is the following. I am going to motion for us to take this list and make it more and add the other items that are missing. And the motion is for City Administrator Cross to send a email to all chairs of all of these committees for consideration by these committees to make a consideration of whether or not their committee, now P&Z is a little different, but whether or not their committee has to meet monthly, first and foremost. And second question is with Zoom capabilities and virtual and remote, would they consider making late afternoon as well, meetings as well? And I'd like to get that data amassed from the chairs of these committees and brought back to this committee so that we can then evaluate whether or not we move this 13.5 or 14.5, if you think about adding rural internet, down to perhaps maybe even half of that, and then provide flexibility within some of these committees that are not council or possibly admin and public works or parks and planning or P&Z, but some of the others, so that we could, via a remote option, be able to get our city staff to do these meetings at 4:30 and perhaps maybe amenable by the members of these committees. So that's my motion for City Administrator Cross to send to the chairs of these committees those two questions about whether or not they could move to an every other and then just pack their agendas for those meetings, and two, whether or not they would consider a time change specifically for those that would be conducive both for city staff, the members of the committee, and for the general public. So that's my motion.
Is there a second to that motion? Councilmember Bertolino seconds it. All right, we got a motion on the floor. So next on the list is Councilmember Edens.
Yeah,
Or for the motion or against the motion, or
well, I just a couple of comments and a question for staff on the motion. I don't see a scenario where standing committees can go to every other month. I mean, for example, we usually are on timetables with contracts in admin and public works. And just for standing committees, I think that when we load an agenda the next time, then it's going to be harder to fit in 2 hours. I will say in economic development, we're usually out between an hour to an hour and a half. So that's fairly efficient. My other clarification is, if I remember right from being on HPC, is they are the only committee by ordinance that is required to meet monthly. Is that correct? City Administrator?
I think planning and zoning also has a specific requirement, and historic preservation, like you said. I'm not aware of the others, but we'll defer.
I kind of question why HPC is required to. That might be something that we need to look at. I understand why planning and zoning is. I just think it's odd when we have 3 standing committees that we have, well, and planning and zoning in terms of citizen volunteer groups is functions like a standing committee. Why we've also singled out HPC, because there isn't the flexibility there. But I don't think, I just want to say now, if the letter goes out, I don't think it's appropriate to have midday meetings or even on committees. I mean, we just spent time talking about how there were problems with St. Louis County holding midday meetings. Now, there have been exceptions. Certainly when we've had to interview people or bring in groups for bids, we have had midday meetings, I know, with economic development, and it's been poorly attended. So I just want to give that feedback, but I do think staff needs to look at why HPC is hard coded in at once a month. And I've been on it and I enjoy it. I just don't understand it.
Point of clarification, I didn't mention midday, end of day, like a 4:30, that's not midday.
I heard midday, I'm sorry. I heard, in my mind, I went to like.
No. I mean, end of day, like a 4 or 5 o'clock type meeting.
Oh, thank you so much for that point of information. I heard wrong. Thank you.
Hey, Councilmember Rambo, you're up.
Sure, thanks. I'll make this quick. I am going to miss Kathy personally and professionally. I think the city will. And when we were talking about long-term planning, we had a staffing plan bullet, and I requested that we add staff retention. That word could have been a number of words, just to address the quality of life issues that we're kind of talking around here right now. This may or may not be the appropriate time to mention it. I missed an opportunity earlier in our meeting, but I think we should talk about flex time and other things, that other staffing, quality of life enhancement kinds of issues. If they attend 4 meetings in a week, that's 8 hours, and there can be some percentage of that, and then they accrue a day off in the middle of the week, the following week or something like that. There's a lot of things that we can do to make it less burdensome on the staff, because Larry Brost is right. I wouldn't want to be working until 8:30 2 nights a week, and then still have to get to work at first thing in the morning and so forth. And so I support Dr. Remy's suggestion that we consider meetings at the end of the day. I just wonder if it's going to get us into the trouble that Ms. Edens was suggesting it might, in terms of folks that can't make it, and more importantly, citizens that want to participate and can't. So I'd say that we should be cautious about making that change to 4:30, but it seems sensible on the surface. So I'm still not decided on which way I'm going to go. That's it.
Councilmember Bertolino, you're up.
Yeah, Ken, I don't know if this is an amendment to your motion or whatever, but it comes to mind that we rely heavily on our directors. Rick's been with us all evening tonight, and Steve's been with us all night. Is there an opportunity for delegation of authority here by the staff that we would allow, and I don't know if this is a charter issue or not, but we would allow for staff members to be ex officio, would step in. So Rick's here tonight, Steve's here tonight. Why do they have to be here if perhaps some of their staff could be here in their stead? I don't know, just open that up as a possibility for sort of spreading the burden without diminishing the number of essential meetings that we have to have.
Do you want me to answer that, or so is that to me, or is that to?
Well, to Steve or you or whoever.
So just
You muted, Ken.
just a point of clarification for my motion. My motion is to bring this concern to the chairs with those considerations, to come back to this committee so that we can then take that information and then make a decision. There's no actionable item that I'm asking for us to make tonight on these committees. That wasn't the purpose of my motion. Sorry, I hope I clarified that.
In terms, City Administrator Cross, you got your hand up.
Yes, I wanted to respond to Mr. Bertolino. There's always that possibility, Mr. Bertolino, in terms of who sits in on the meetings and so forth. But I think in my case, I'll start with me. I sit on virtually every meeting, because if I'm going to be the city administrator, how do I know? I mean, I have to know maybe a little bit about everything that's going on. I mean, I'll be able to get in, but I feel like I can't afford to miss a meeting, or I just won't be in a position to be able to respond to you all and to the mayor with information. As far as the directors, I dare say that Joe and Rick probably feel the same way. When there's something on the agenda, Joe Vunish is not here tonight. This is not something. So Joe, he pulled out at 5 o'clock today. He got to go home, and good for him. I'm glad, because otherwise he's here every night on all other committees. So, I mean, we do, we attend the meetings that we need to. I don't know, again, the directors and my role, we kind of feel like we need to be there. I think it's just part of our work ethic. You know, I mean, if we're going to be in a management role as we are, we're going to be there if we're required, and we need to know. But, you know, if there's an opportunity sometime, I mean, obviously any one of us is unavailable. We have people that we can delegate that to, if we can't. But if we're available, we're gonna be there. Maybe, like I say, maybe, you know, I see it more of an opportunity to see if we can throttle back a little bit on the number of committees themselves. But whatever number that is, if it's 10, if it's 15, if it's 20, you're going to be looking at our ugly mugs. We'll be there, I think. Rick, no offense, Rick, but so I don't know if that answers your question, Mr. Berlino.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Farmer, you're up.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, Ken, I really like your amendment a lot. I think my only concern with it, and I'm happy to kind of let the course play out, is, you know, my experience on some of the other committees that I've been on, these are all typically volunteer city people that are being appointed to do it. And so they are feeling that is their place to give back to the city. And so I'm willing to bet that most of them are going to feel like it is very important for them to meet as regularly as they do. I know, at least when Lauren and I were on historic preservation, I think it was with this, I was double booked with this or something else a lot of times. So I had to make a determination for myself as to which one was more important. So I think unless you are probably a person that's on more than one committee and outside of the council members and the city staff, I don't think that applies to anybody. You are going once a month, so you don't think that's that big of a deal. I don't know that a lot of people realize that, you know, certainly the staff and then some council members are there, you know, certainly a couple weeks of the month, you know, several times. So I think we can maybe let that play out, asking the chairs, but I would maybe lean, Steve, on you to just, you know, I'm looking at this list and I'm starting to think like, you know, I'm not on these committees, but there's got to be some of these things that can meet maybe even quarterly, to just be like, look, this stuff it's not necessary every month. We appreciate you wanting to participate, but like, we can limit this to this period of time. And my big concern would be if we ask the chairs what they feel like, and they say, we feel like we should meet all the time. And then we get back and we go, well, we feel like you shouldn't. That's a little bit maybe not going to be accepted very well by them.
Okay. All right. I'll just make a comment here, and I do see another hand. Councilmember Remy, your hand is back up. So just a couple of things. I think the exercise is a good exercise to see what's out there. I will caution that I remember one time early on when I was on council, one time there was a meeting scheduled, like I think at 4 o'clock, and there was mass outrage. So the time was not well received. So I think we'll have to consider, you know, residents and their availability. And so probably 5 or later might be realistic. The other item that I would suggest is that we could come up with hopefully some meeting best practices, just like some of the points that have been raised tonight about encouraging folks to do their pre-work before the meeting, reading the memorandums that are prepared. Certainly try to limit repeating comments or statements over and over again. And if we agree, then we don't necessarily need to debate, because the motion on the floor, hopefully we'll get the votes and move forward. So that's probably just something that can be done administratively and provided to folks. And hopefully we can instill some good best practices moving forward. That's all I've got to say. But Councilmember Remy, your hand is back up.
No, I appreciate the comments. No, I think the big difference probably now versus like 2016, with having, say, a 4 o'clock or 4:30 or even 5 o'clock meeting is, quite frankly, what we're doing right now. And I think that this has changed the landscape of participation and interaction in a lot of ways for us. So listen, I'm not saying that we're not making a hard decision tonight about timing and all those things. I think there's a unique opportunity for us to sort of pull the chairs, or if that's not a reasonable option and it gets voted down, one consideration might be to just have Mr. Cross have a meeting with all the chairs, and we just have a meeting, frankly, and we just say, hey, this is the reason why we're doing this. Because we want to retain our city employees. We want to do that. We want to minimize the amount of, because the more meetings we have, the less work that our staff actually can do because they have to prepare for more meetings. So it's kind of counterproductive in some ways because we run a lean ship with phenomenal people and we don't want to overburden them from doing the work every day that they need to do for the citizens. So that's kind of the tenet. So I think that Zoom, may change the perspective of a lot of individuals. Don't get me wrong. I much prefer to be in person with you guys right now rather than being on this darn thing that I'm on all day long when I'm not in the ICU. So I would love to do that. But I think having flexibility and then affording the ability to perhaps pull the chairs and say, can we become more efficient? And as mentioned, quarterly or become every other month. I think it's reasonable to consider, and that's why I made the motion.
Okay. Councilmember Edens, your hand is up.
Yep, I'm going to call the question, and then after we have a vote, I would like to come back and make a motion to go into closed session and suspend the agenda item order.
Okay, so hold on. We are.
If there's no other comments, I don't need to.
No,
call
I
the
don't think there
question.
are any other comments.
Okay.
With that, we have the motion on the floor. We'll try a voice vote. I think that hopefully will do it. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any oppose? Any abstain? All right, the motion passes. So, Council
Mr.
Member
Chair, I would love
Edens,
to make a motion to go into closed session.
so basically, we could just make a motion since there is only one other item on the agenda, just to postpone the remote participation policy to the next meeting. And now accomplish that. So do you want to make that motion?
I'd like to make the motion as
Okay.
stated by the chair.
Motion to postpone the remote participation policy to the next meeting. Is there a second? Councilmember Flasher, I see your fingers there. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstain? The motion passes. Excellent. So moving on, we do have miscellaneous, anything under miscellaneous that anyone has?
Oh, I have just a
Oh.
real quick question. When we have trees that overhang a city sidewalk but are privately owned and not city street trees, is it the same reporting form? I asked for two reasons. One is funny enough, I got an email about it today, but yesterday I went for a walk and I found a tree. And when I say found it, I mean my forehead found it on a walk.
That would probably be a question for Mr. Cross.
City Administrator Cross.
Thank you, Ms. Edens. I'm happy to answer that. And then I'm sure Mr. Brown would like to perhaps weigh in as well, because he and I had that conversation at about 4 o'clock today.
It was timely. I was going to ask it anyway, and then that email.
Yes, ma'am. But it is a very, very good question because we did get an email from a resident who was complaining about trees from my homeowners association that was encroaching over the sidewalk, which is city property. And so Mr. Brown throws it to me and says, Mr. Cross, would you like to handle this one? So, but we did discuss it. In this particular case that we were talking about today, we have approached the homeowners association once, and we were going to do so again and give them a time frame in which to get it done. If the city does it, it costs us money. We will call out a contractor, typically Glenn Gailey, and there will be a cost to the city. I've tried to avoid that if at all possible and engage the HOA for them to do it. However, at the end of the day, if they are not getting it done on a timely basis, we owe it to the residents to get it done and to get it done quickly. So I asked Mr. Brown to look. We're going to have a further conversation in the morning. We simply ran out of time with this meeting today, but we're going to talk about it a little bit more. He's going to reach out to this HOA. So it's not black and white, Ms. Edens. It really, but I will say that my preference would be to kick it to the HOA, to the private homeowner or landowner, if you will, the tree owner, and have that do it. But if they don't, then we're going to step in and get it done, because that's what we do.
And a lot of times, sometimes it's trees that face, or trees, it's houses that face roads that aren't a part of HOAs as well. So in that case, it would go directly to the homeowner and not an HOA.
Correct. If they're not part of an HOA, then yes, we could inquire to the homeowner, through our code enforcement folks to do that. But again, if they're not, we're just going to go out and just do it ourselves and get it done.
I'll send you an email about the one my forehead found.
Thank you. I look
It
forward
reached
to
out just to get me. It's not that I'm a klutz. It became alive like Fantasia and just got me. That's my story.
and you're sticking to it. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Okay, with that, then the next item on the agenda is an executive closed session. So the way this is going to work, we will need a motion and it'll be a roll call vote to go into closed session. And then what we'll do is Mr. Cross will drop off. Rick is on, and Rick is going to make sure that we have everything locked down for executive closed session. And then Rick will be going on, he's going to mute his speaker and kind of just do some work there. And then when we're done, I will call Rick up by phone, your cell phone. And then Rick will come back on. And then what he'll do is restart the recording in the YouTube so that this way we can close out and adjourn the meeting. So with that, I do see Councilmember Clark. You're welcome to join us. And then we have the city attorney as well, which will, I guess, kind of be there. John, are you going to stay with us, or are you planning to drop?
I am at the pleasure of the committee.
Okay, so maybe we'll just kind of have you there and then see if there's anything we have a question with. So with that, then let's have a motion to go into executive closed session according to RSMO 610.0213. Is there someone that'll make a motion? Councilmember Edens, seconded by Councilmember Farmer. Roll call vote, Carla?
Councilmember Bartolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Chair Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember Remy.
Yes.
Okay, the motion is approved. So Steve, thank you. We'll see you. Rick, you're going to do your magic and shut off the recording and the YouTube.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
All right, we are recording.
All right, we are at the end of the meeting, so we need a motion to adjourn, made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Brost. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any oppose? Any abstain? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
I want to know where Larry Brost is going.
He's on the go. That guy is always on the move.
Where you headed, Larry?
Well, we